Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of the Retirement Readiness Podcast. Today, we're talking about long-term care. So let's dive right in.
The Retirement Readiness Podcast with Tim Regan and Katie Umland. Presented by Prairie View Wealth and Tax Advisors. Live your 2 life.
So we've talked a little bit about long-term care, but it's been a while. So I thought maybe we could talk again about some options.
Well, yeah, and it's such a uplifting conversation.
Yeah. It's uplifting, but it's not obviously, but I feel like there's so many different options. People are always confused or have a lot of thoughts, opinions, questions about it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's on the back of every single person's mind,
Mm-hmm.
right? At some point you start thinking, well, shoot, what happens if my health does fail? And for some people, it's because they've had that experience, like they saw mom or dad or somebody go through it. For you, right? We talk about grandma all the time.
Yeah.
You going with mom on the daily almost, right? To go visit grandma. And so some people have that experience, or some people say, you know what? Nobody in my family ever lived that long or whatever, but I think it's something that's always in the back of everybody's mind.
Well, and long-term care, it can mean that maybe you're saving for, or you start having long-term care insurance, or maybe that means you're putting some of your own money away to have your own nurse, or, I feel like there's so many different options. Or maybe long-term care means you want to stay in your own house no matter what, or, I think it doesn't mean.
It's a whole gamut of things. And I think that's what makes it so scary for people, because there are so many unknowns. What will my health be like, and how's that the unknown? How much will it cost, and how's that the unknown? Like, you just go down this list of things and you're like, it's a lot of unknowns. But I think ultimately, when we start talking about, like, for this episode, let's start talking like a little bit about how do I pay for this, and what does that look like? Because there are options. And what we find is that if we list through kind of what those options are, we have some clients that are buried my head in the sand, and I want to pretend like it's not an option. So I do nothing. We have some clients that do kind of what you said, and they say, you know what, I think I want to self-insure or protect myself. And so I'm going to save some extra dollars or set some of my money aside for that purpose. And then you have some clients that say, I want to take out long-term care insurance. And there's a whole gamut of those types of policies, and what do those look like? And so we can get to some of those details as well. But I think it's finding the right mix for you. And sometimes it's a combination. I'm going to save some and I'm going to insure some.
I think it probably goes back to like what your risk tolerance is. Like for Alex and I, we're not very risky people, and we'd rather put our money into long-term care insurance and know we're set.
Done. Check it off the box.
And for some people that feels that, and to us, that is less risky.
Yep.
And to others, that's more risky, because what if I never use it? Now that all that money's gone. Absolutely. So I think it probably kind of goes to what you're. Yeah,
it goes for both. Right. And as we look at that, so it's funny. Let's talk a little bit about just the difference between if I self-insure or if I shift that to an insurance company. And then we'll get into like what does it mean to have long-term care insurance? What are some of the details to that? But what we actually find is that for the most part, people that have the mindset that you and Alex do, like, hey, I'm going to buy this insurance, I'm going to check it off the list, I know I got it, and I'm good, tend to spend more freely than the people spend more freely in retirement than the people that don't. And it's so funny because the people that say I'm going to self-insure many times are thinking, well, I'm going to save all those premium dollars. But then what happens is they set this money aside. They're like, that's my long-term care money. So now I'll be talking to them about improving their lifestyle. Well, let's go. You can do that travel. Why aren't you traveling more? Oh, I can't touch that money. That's my long-term care money. Where if they had paid a little bit in insurance premium, that would have freed up that entire pool of money now for them to go in.
Because it's checked off. They don't have to
worry about it. Just a normal expense that I've already accounted for in my daily livings type of stuff. So,
and it's less, there's less,
variable.
That's the word I'm trying to say.
No, for sure. And so what it does is it kind of takes, like we've talked about it a lot, right? Where you have to define the monster. Before you define the monster, it's big, it's scary, it fills the entire room. Once you define it, that scariness goes away. Yeah. And that can happen with long-term care insurance. You can start to get all of those variables broken back down and say, no, this is defined now, and it's not nearly as scary as what it was. And so let's talk then a little bit about the types of insurance, or why insurance. And when you think about the why part, what I kind of like to do is I kind of like to think about it in a couple of different perspectives. The first one is think about going to an all-inclusive vacation or to a buffet, an all-you-can-eat buffet. When you go to those places, do you eat more or less than when you're paying by the price or by the unit? You eat more, right? If you're sitting in an all-you-can-eat buffet, why would you not, right? If I'm sitting on the beach, I'm going to drink way more sweet, fruity drinks than if I have to pay $15 each time I order one. It's kind of the same thing with long-term care insurance. What happens is, as people age and as their health starts to fail, if their kids know they have a policy, what are the kids going to want to do? Cash in on the policy and make sure that we're taking advantage of everything that we can. If they don't have a policy, I'm back to paying $15 for a fruity drink, and I'm going to try to avoid the care that potentially they need because I don't know about the expense side of it. Now, on the one hand, you can hear that and think, well, isn't that what you want? I don't want to go to a nursing home. Well, no, we're not talking nursing home. We're talking about, it could be at-home care. It could be assisted living. It could be a nursing home, but we're talking about paying for the things that you need. And so if I couple that with kind of a not nice or not fun analogy, when I think about myself, there is no way that when I've lived this life that I'm proud of, right? I'm a person that takes pride in myself, and I want people to have an image of who dad is, who grandpa is, those types of things. Do I really want the ending images for my daughters to be that they were taking care of me, or my daughter-in-law? And I think about it, it's mostly a girl thing, right? I don't see Tim stepping in to
wipe your butt.
Yeah, to do that kind of stuff, right? Although I do have to say, ever since he was tiny, we've always talked about how he's my partner. We're going to be partners and stuff. And I tease him. I tell we get older, I'll do the poop and you do the wiping. Partner.
You've already done your wiping portion.
Yeah, exactly. But when I think about that, I'm like, that's not what I want. What I would love to have is if I needed some sort of care, some help, I would love it if I could live with them and we could play cards on Friday nights and we could have pizza and movie night or, do the fun stuff. But when it comes to the unnice things, let somebody come in and do all of the unnice things. And so when I think about that, if I'm going to write a check every time somebody has to come in and do the unnice stuff, I'm going to be like, do I really want to do it? And then all of a sudden you're in a situation where I don't want to be.
And you don't want to ask your kids, but you can't do it yourself.
Exactly. And now all of a sudden, if I converse that to, okay, now I have a long-term care policy that will pay for somebody to come in and do those things. I can still move in with my daughter or move in with Tim or whatever. And we can have that relationship, but we can have that relationship and do all the fun stuff together. And my grandkids can know grandpa. Because
I also feel like it eventually is going to come down to your kids have to make decisions.
Yes. And
you don't want to put them in a position that they don't want to put you in a home, but maybe they're uncomfortable with you being at home or, and then now your kids are starting to have to make those choices because you're beyond.
We see it all the time. And what happens is that decision is hard enough, but then to have to figure out how do we pay for it? Do we have enough money? Do we not? It just complicates the whole thing that much more. So, you're 1,000% correct. And what happens is it doesn't have to be that scary. So let's just kind of break down a little bit what happens for most people if they need care. If you think about anything other than at-home care, if you think about assisted living or nursing or skilled care, any of that kind of stuff, when the time comes for that type of living, you don't have a house anymore because you don't have to live there. So all of the expenses that go along with a house, your mortgage, or if you have one, your taxes, your utilities, go down the list, all that expense goes away. And you have this asset that you just sold that created a pool of money. So now if you're going to go into an assisted living facility, you don't have to come up with the $10,000 a month that it's going to take to live there because you can apply your Social Security to it because you have no other expense. You can apply if you had a pension to it, whatever you were living on, you can apply all of that towards that stay. Plus you have this asset now that's liquidated your house that you can invest and use some of that to help pay for it too. So the first part of it is don't let it be this huge, overwhelming, scary, be option one where I bury my head in the sand. There are options here, right? And so now what we're really talking about is we're talking about how do I bridge the gap between what the assisted living facility costs and what my income and assets already provide. And that delta or that difference is much smaller than people think. And so when they think about, I have to go buy a long-term care policy, it's not I have to insure $12,000 a month. No, I just have to make up the difference between what I'm living on and what the other cost is so that I don't end up going broke in the process.
So when do people start paying for long-term care insurance typically?
So ideally, we would suggest you start looking at insurance sometime mid 50s to early 60s. So the brackets I like to think of is 55 to 62. What typically happens is if you're 55, you're not so young that you're paying premiums on a policy for decades before you're ever going to think about needing it. But you're young enough that usually much of the health issues that come in that might make you ineligible to buy the policy are gone. And you're young enough that the premiums are cheap still compared to when you get older.
So it's kind of like life insurance, like your premiums are when you take the policy out, and then that's what you pay.
Yeah, well, and it's
forever.
So it depends. So maybe let's talk a little bit about the different types of long-term care insurance. So pure long-term care insurance is what you talked about at the outset when you said, hey, I'm going to pay a bunch of premiums. If I never go anywhere, this policy is useless. That's a traditional long-term care. Kind of think of it like your homeowners, where your homeowner's policy only covers your house. If your car gets in an accident, your homeowner's policy doesn't really help you a whole lot. Same thing with long-term care. If you don't have a long-term care issue or need, your policy doesn't pay anything. When you think about other types of policies, they have hybrids in the marketplace where it's not a straight long-term care policy, but you mentioned life insurance. What policies today will do is they will say, we're going to sell you a life insurance policy that has a long-term care rider on it.
Okay.
So now if I never use this coverage for long-term care, my family gets the death benefit. So it's like it costs my estate nothing because they get this death benefit that comes back. But if I need it, I've got long-term care coverage that will help to cover that need.
So can you just quickly give like a brief overview of like who would choose what?
So if I need long-term care, so I know I need to have that kind of coverage, and not need because I'm sick, but I need it because maybe I don't have enough assets or enough income to provide for that type of lifestyle. You are going to get more long-term care coverage for your premium dollar in a straight long-term care policy. If you think about it, it kind of is just logical. Meaning if I don't have added benefits like a death benefit, then it's going to be cheaper and I'm going to get more coverage per dollar if I go with a straight long-term care policy. Versus the other type of coverage, that's really for people that say kind of what you talked about when you said, you know what, I know I need some coverage. I really don't want to lose all this money if I don't use it. And I have some additional dollars I can put towards premium because maybe I have some more assets. Now that's an option to for that type of individual.
So it's kind of a different way to diversify with your other incomes or
and really
savings.
And what it does is it allows you to say, I kind of have my cake and eat it too. What I like to think about though with that is, so think about like a Swiss Army knife. Swiss Army knives can help you in all kinds of situations. They got those little cute scissors. They got
clippers,
the toothpick, like whatever. They got all kinds of stuff, right, that you can use. But if you need to chop through the rainforest, it ain't going to do you a whole lot of good. You need a machete for that, right? And so what happens is when you look at it and say, I want a policy that is going to truly protect me from long-term care. That's like the machete, right? It's specific for a purpose. It is going to do a far better job for that specific purpose than anything else. Other policies, these combination policies, you're like, you know what? I may need to cut something, but I also may need to, clean my teeth or whatever. And so that's where that Swiss Army knife comes into play, where you can say, I can use this Swiss Army knife in a lot more situations and it's got a lot more utility for me. But if I'm going into clear a rainforest, that might not be the best tool that I use to do that.
And so if somebody's not working with Prairie View currently, like, is this a long-term care policy, something that you could get like State Farm or like, is it just financial planners, or where would you go? Yeah.
So our suggestion would be, you obviously through a Prairie View type, but it doesn't have to be a financial planner,
or a financial advisor.
Yeah, whatever you want to call it, right? Who knows what those words mean anymore? Right. Everybody calls themselves that. But it should be somebody that is, if you're not going to a fiduciary financial planner type relationship, at least go to somebody who is a broker, not an individual policy or individual company representative. So you mentioned State Farm. I don't know about State Farm. Maybe they can offer all kinds of policies. I'm not up on their business model, but a company like that typically will only offer whatever products State Farm manufactures.
Okay.
State Farm may not manufacture the best product. For example, when we're talking about this life insurance, long-term care policy, there are policies out there that are very unique. Like One America is a company that offers a very unique policy that is really kind of cool and in the right situations makes a lot of sense. Well, if you go to somebody and they only offer this one policy, you might be missing out on something that's better for you. So whether you go to the fiduciary who's a financial advisor or you go to an insurance person, that insurance person should be a broker offering multiple options, not just one company.
Because one size doesn't fit all.
No, it does not. Yeah, and I don't know if
not well, at least.
No, and I don't know if the siren went on as it went by the window here, but hopefully that's not somebody heading to their long-term care stay.
Hopefully they have long-term care.
And so if we talk about kind of how these policies are designed, all long-term care policies are going to have the basic same features. So when you go into it, there will be nuances that kind of are part of it. But think about it as when you go to buy a car, that car is going to have basically the same exact features as the car next to it. 4 wheels, motor, transmission, steering wheel, like those things aren't changing. You might choose a car then because it's got this cool feature or that cool feature. But before you do that, you just need to know this is a car. I know how to drive a car because I went through driver's ed, and I can basically function any car I sit in because they all operate the same way. And then, like I said, you might choose it because of certain features or what have you. So all long-term care policies work the exact same way. You will start with choosing what's called an elimination period. It's a fancy word. All it means is think about your deductible. You will pay for a period of time out of your own pocket before the policy kicks in. And so when you think about that, that just means like the first typically 90 days.
If something happened, if you had to go to a facility, you'd be paying for it. You're paying for it.
Or if somebody came into your house or whatever, you're paying for that. Just like any other deductible, you have to pay up front before policy kicks in. And so just like any other deductible, the bigger the deductible, the lower the premium. The lower the deductible, the higher the premium. So a lot of times we see 90 days as the time period. We choose 90 days first because if you qualify, Medicare could cover you for 110 days.
Okay.
So we feel kind of like, hey, why double insure?
Covered? Yeah.
Secondly, most of our clients can afford a 90-day expense like that. They're not going to go broke. It might hurt, but they're not going to go broke.
If it even 90 days is pretty quick. Yes. Like if it even would to happen.
Exactly. So that's usually why we choose it. And it usually helps make premiums affordable enough, but still offer some decent coverage. The second thing you're going to choose is once it starts paying, how much is this going to pay going forward? And you get to choose that. It could be $1,000 a month, or it could be $10,000 a month or more. Once that's decided, then you choose how long is it going to pay. Will it pay for 3 years, 6 years, 9 years? How long is that going to pay for? And each company has their own specifics. This is a 5-year policy or 6 year, but the details there are kind of like, do I have 18-inch rims or 20-inch rims? Those are the details to the car you buy, but the premise is the same. So when you design that policy for yourself, you should really be looking at, okay, deductible. how much cash do I have on hand that I could cover a medical emergency should I need to, and set the deductible appropriately. Then when you think about how much do I need this to pay? Well, just like we talked earlier in this episode, start with, I think I'm saying $10,000 a month. Well, I can subtract my Social Security from that, and I can subtract the rental income I have from my rental house, and I can subtract the money I take out for my minimum required distributions, or whatever your income sources are. And you say, now I have left $3,000 a month that I need to make up. Great. That's what I'm going to do for my long-term care policy. And then lastly, look to see how long do I think I want this to pay? And where that comes into play a lot of times is whether or not you live in a partnership state. So Illinois has partnership status. What that means is that the state of Illinois will match what I have in long-term care benefits, as long as there are rules. You have to fit within these rules, but as long as I meet their requirements, they will match my long-term care benefits before they force me to sell assets and go on Medicaid. So it's kind of like they'll say, hey, you've got a 3-year policy, we'll match your 3-year policy. And it's just a way to encourage people to get long-term care insurance, and not go broke in the process. And so if I've got partnership status, that's one choice. If I don't have partnership, that might be a different choice as I design that policy. Once your policy's in place, there are small nuances you get to choose. Do I want inflation on the benefit? Do I want my $3,000 a month to go up every year because costs are going to go up? And then you get to, all policies will have a similar qualification process. You have to be unable to do 2 of 6 activities of daily living. So activities of daily living, things like
wiping your butt.
Not one of them.
Okay.
but if you can't get to the toilet, meaning you have incontinence issues, that is one of them. So it's feeding yourself, bathing yourself, dressing yourself. If you have incontinence issues, transferring, getting up out of the chair and going into the other room. Or then they will also include cognitive issues, because there are a lot of people that physically are perfectly fine, but cognitively probably should not be living on their own. And so then you're automatically covered. I feel like that was a lot of talking on my part and a lot of technical stuff, but it just helps to kind of start with a base that says, okay, now that I understand the basics of it, now how do I go about, some of those details? I
feel like that's another reason why it's really nice to have somebody walk you through it, because it's a lot of options to think about, and like a lot of the options that are like, I don't understand the ramifications.
How
of
would
what
I
I'm
even
choosing.
make that choice? Yeah.
Like, I don't know what this is going to lead
Which is
to.
why it really needs to be integrated into the overall financial plan that you have. One of the reasons that our business has chosen to go the fiduciary route and to really just be financial advisors that talk about all of these things is, my picture is, it's really hard to design, say, a long-term care policy if the individual designing it has no idea how that affects your income long-term, or
right.
It's just too hard to do.
So how does it, maybe this is like getting too far in the weeds, but if I also have a life insurance policy, like how does that influence your long-term care? Like, is it just side by side? I understand you said like there's a hybrid that kind of has both, but like.
Yeah. So the way that we would look at that is, it's kind of funny. So sometimes we have to get creative. So let's say that Sarah and I, that she's healthy and can have long-term care. I'm unhealthy. Well, the plan would be that she's going to outlive me, just because she's healthier than me, and maybe I can't get insurances because I'm so unhealthy. So then we would have long-term care on her, because the thought is her longevity. But in order to protect us also, we might say, yeah, but what if she dies first and Tim needs long-term care? So we may have life insurance and long-term care all on Sarah, because Tim's not healthy enough to get those coverages, with the idea, it's not perfect, but it's a workaround, with the idea that if chances are right and Sarah lives long, she's got long-term care coverage. But if she doesn't live a long life and Tim, who's unhealthy, is going to need long-term care coverage, we now have created a pool of money that can pay for that, because we had some life insurance.
So using that benefit as your long-term care kind of plan.
Yep.
Okay.
And not always, like I said, that's not perfect. It's not the best way, but it's one way to try to have some coverage in that case.
So you kind of look, when it's time for long-term care, you can kind of look at what you currently have set up, and then you can make changes to coverage or.
Well, and when it comes time to look at it, what it should really start with is, what's my retirement plan look like? How's my income look? What is my risk? What if I needed this? Needed this, meaning needed care. How would I pay for that? But then really to say from there, can I afford the premiums? Because it's dumb to eat dog food now so that you can have that taken care of later on potentially. But that's why it has to be coordinated.
So how's this strategy? I'll just have mom pay me for long-term care so that I can apply that to my mortgage and she can live with me.
Yes. Actually, you say that kind of jokingly, but there are policies that have the ability for a loved one to care for you, and they'll pay that loved one. But the loved one has to have training in geriatric types of things. And so you can't just say, hey, I'm moving in.
I need a payday.
Yeah. But if you were, say, a geriatric nurse and we said, hey, this is her credentials, there are actually policies that would do that.
Because I could see that like both people want to live together. Like they both want that. But as the parent, you might have some guilt. Sure. And so maybe that eases some of your guilt of, hey, well, at least I know I am like contributing.
Yeah.
And then that feels like, I could just imagine that a parent might have some guilt of like, I'm horning in on their life or, all these things. So at least then maybe that 100%. Does feel like.
Yeah. A good balance.
Yeah.
A good offset at least. Yeah. And that's why I'm a huge proponent of, we talk about it all the time with grandma, everybody thinks that, man, if something happens to me, I want to stay in my home as long as I possibly can. But there's a lot to be said for the social aspect of being inside of a long-term care kind of facility and assisted living or nursing home. And there's something about with grandma, there's something about him knocking on the door and saying, Florence, let's go play checkers, or hey, Florence, it's time for dinner or whatever. And then having that social interaction. There's a lot to that and a lot to be said for it, which a lot of times is missed when you go to live with your kids, because your kids are busy. Yeah. They got stuff going on. They're not there all the time. And so there is a lot to be said for, going into that some sort of care.
Because I personally, without being like actually in this situation, I think it sounds great. Like you mentioned, like, mom, come live with us, but we're going to pay for a nurse.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Like, this is kind of like, I'm not going to be your nurse. Like, that does not sound good for either one of us.
Yes.
But I think that's kind of a nice balance. When you want somebody to go
pal around with and maybe go to the store with you, or like I said,
or she's at home, I can leave the kids at home, or take her with for all their soccer or whatever. Yeah. That sounds fun, but let's kind of get best of both worlds. So 100%. There's so many different options that to think about.
There are. Yeah, absolutely. And that stuff isn't cheap, right? And so you don't want to end up with saying, this is the ideal. If I would have only planned, we could have had ideal, but since I didn't plan, I'm stuck with the leftovers, and that's not what you want to be. And we see it a lot of times also, even in choice of facility. We have clients that have plenty of money, and for some reason, when it comes to choosing where they're going to stay, if they don't have long-term care insurance, or if it's coming out of their pocket, all of a sudden they get real cheap real fast.
Yeah.
And like, you would never have chosen this for yourself. Like, why now are either the kids or you getting cheap when it comes to this?
Well, you know why? Because they don't have a way to make more money like they used to, and it's indefinite how long they're going to have to pay for it.
Yep. And they feel like it's wasting money. And, because everybody says, well, I want to waste my money on a long-term care facility.
That's your life. That's your life.
Exactly. And so,
then cut the cord now.
Yeah. Get her done. And that's the other thing. A lot of times people will say, well, if I get that bad, just pull the plug, or, that kind of stuff. And, having gone through that and with dad and seeing mom, I'll never forget when mom was like, when dad was we're like end time, he's not getting out of bed, even that kind of stuff. I remember mom saying, like, I'll take care of him. If God will let him stay here, I'll take care of him as long as God will keep him here. And so it's not fair. Like, that's not a real solution.
Right.
That's another version of somebody putting their head in the sand, right? The fact is that this is something that may or may not happen to you. We pray it doesn't. Hopefully you go quick. But if you don't do it to your family where you haven't prepared for it. Treat your family with the love and concern that you have for your entire life, and just be intentional about it and give them a path forward.
So just a light topic,
fun stuff all the time. So I do think
long-term care facilities sometimes have ice cream machines.
Well, ice cream machines and happy hour.
I was going to say, and bars.
They're putting in bars now. And like, seriously, if you haven't,
entertainment.
These are not the places that you used to go to. Like, so, Katie, we went to Lutheran school, obviously. And when you're going through grade school in a Christian school, a lot of times you go and sing at a nursing home at Christmas and all that kind of stuff. And for us, when the place had closed before you went through school, but we always went to, there was a county hospital that was for the poor and indigent. And as you went through this county hospital, I mean, there were people here that were the 20-year-old that was in a motorcycle accident all the way up to the 108-year-old type of stuff. Those old ladies giving you a kiss with their whiskers. I mean, but when you walked in, there was a certain smell that went with those kinds of, that ain't what it is anymore. No. Now it's like you're walking into the Hilton or Marriott.
Yeah, there's a front desk right there. There's a receptionist right there. Yeah. It literally is.
They have a pub. They have happy hour. They have like all kinds of stuff. And so
every night is different entertainment. Yeah. Different game night, different.
Yeah, we say it,
bringing in different people.
Yeah, we say it all the time. Like, if I told you when you were 50 that you're going to go somewhere where you can have
3 meals a day
provided, they'll clean your room, right. They will do your laundry, they have excursions that they plan that you can go on,
you get your nails done.
You'd be like, that's a cruise, right? Or that's vacation, and that's really what it is. I mean, it can be very comfortable for people. So.
Thank you so much for joining us this week. For more resources, head to pv-wp.com.
The Retirement Readiness Podcast with Tim Regan and Katie Umland. Presented by Prairie View Wealth and Tax Advisors. Live your 2-comma life. Learn more at pv-wp.com. And while you're at it, don't forget to subscribe to the Retirement Readiness Podcast on your preferred podcast platform.